Good morning, everybody. I'm Nicole Hennessy. I'm the Vice President and Director of Communications at the Music Business Association. Welcome to our first ever Music Biz Passport. Music Biz Passport is an idea that our staff and board came up with back before the pandemic as a way for us to take the Music Biz Conference and take the best components of the Music Biz Conference and take them globally to interact with international music communities so that we can learn from one another. We wanted to allow executives to connect with international trend centers, learn what does and does not work in other markets around the world. Then, of course, pandemic happened. Nobody was traveling, and the passport idea came back up. And it was this year during our call for presentations that we really noticed a swell of presentation ideas from countries around the world. And we thought, let's kick off the Music Biz Passport as a virtual series, start connecting virtually with these trend-setting countries around the world. And so here we are today with our first passport event. Our hope is that we will take this on the global stage and travel to different countries and to learn and to meet while we're there. But we are going to start out virtually today with a really fun group. You're going to fall in love with the Nordics today, as the title says. Turo Pekari from Music Finland has been coming to the Music Biz annual conference since 2017 and now brings 30 plus individuals from Iceland, Denmark, Norway, Finland, Sweden with him to the conference. They're a fun group. There's a lot to learn from this group today. You're going to gain some insights into the intricacies of the Nordic music industry, identify the untapped potential and opportunities for collaboration and investment in the music scene. You're going to delve into some success stories and examine how Nordic professionals and creatives are paving the way. And you're going to discover how the Nordic region is at the forefront of technological innovation within the music industry. So welcome, everybody, those viewing and especially those presenting today. Turo, I'm going to bring you and your team on stage and let you introduce our panelists today. But thank you for being here. Thank you for bringing your constituency to Music Biz. And I think they're going to fall in love with you today, and your meeting room is going to be packed. That's our goal.
Super. Hello, everyone. My name is Turo Pekari. I work for Music Finland, which is the export office for the Finnish music industry as their innovation and business development executive. And like you just heard, I've been around in Nashville for a few times, and it kind of started traveling solo to Music Biz for the first couple of years, but then I started to bring people on board, first only from Finland, and now for a couple of years also from all the Nordic countries. And it's been a successful ride, and we have some really great people in this discussion today. And we're gonna dig deeper into the Nordic music business scene and what it's like to do business with people from the Nordic countries. When I'm talking about the Nordic countries, of course, I assume there's a lot of people from US in the audience. Of course, we're up in the north of Europe. 5 countries: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. So roughly 25 million people. And if we think about the size of the music industry, I think in general on all of the 5 countries, we're talking about roughly 3 billion euros turnover annually. Well, pretty similar in US dollars as well. And US is probably one of the most important export markets for all of the Nordic countries at the moment. And that is why we put a lot of attention to your specific market, and of course with export organizations like we do have in the Nordic countries, we help a lot of professionals to fly there, meet people, network, do business. And at the moment, I would say that there's probably a few key hubs: LA, Nashville, New York at the moment, where there's most action happening and where most Nordic people travel for business. And if we think about the scene from the Nordics, what is actually right now coming up a lot, and who are permanently there, I think, especially in Finland, it's the songwriting and producing scene, which is going to get bigger and bigger nowadays, and especially in LA, we have permanently a lot of people spending time there and doing a lot of collab with US people. But Nashville is starting to be another one, and that's one of the reasons we are really much targeting now our upcoming trade mission to Nashville for music publishers and songwriter and producer managers, because that's basically the other place where we think we can probably gain a lot of attention and do also successful business. But it's not just that. Of course, if we think about the Nordics, there's a lot of innovation and technology also building up in our countries, and of course Spotify is from Sweden, and Tidal is from Norway. So we have a lot of big platforms there as well, which of course. And when it comes to music, of course, we're not just business-minded people, but there's a lot of talent in the Nordic countries, starting all the way from ABBA from Sweden to a lot of cool acts, artists, and performers nowadays. I could just mention some more mainstream pop acts like Alma from Finland, or Lucas Graham from Denmark, Kygo, Sigrid from Norway, who are doing pretty well in the US at the moment, and hopefully even bigger in the future. But coming back to today's topic, we will have a very nice group of people in the discussion today. And I would like to give the floor now for some introductions. We have one special guest from Finland, actually based in Miami at the moment, and two people from the States who have quite a lot of experience in working with people from the Nordic countries. Let's start with Johanna. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit, what are you up to now, and what are you doing in Miami?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Turo, for such kind words. But yeah, my name is Johanna. I run my own independent management company from Finland. Kinda, I'm never there, but my company's there. But yeah, I currently manage two artists and one songwriter producer. And yeah, both of my artists are everything business-wise is happening in the US. Hence, I'm here. One of them being half Latino, so we are spreading into the Latin market. So hence, I'm in Miami. All the main kind of Latin offices being based here. But yeah, that's what I do. Been working as a manager for like 7 years, more or less, I guess. Yeah, that's me. Nice to meet you all, and thanks for coming to listen to us.
Robbie.
Hi, everyone. Robbie Towns, based in Nashville. I'm co-founder and head of strategy for Good Cop, Bad Cop. Been doing, in terms of just focusing on the international component of what I've done now for, I guess, over a decade. Been going to conferences like Eurosonic since 2011, and that through a variety of different, just meetings, connections, led to meeting Turo and actually setting up trade missions this year, which will be the third consecutive year. Initially, it was Music Finland, and then it's been Nomex last year, and then again this year. But for me, it's a personal interest and passion of mine of like connecting those global dots. And then from a business standpoint, I think that is maybe in the US, I feel like we can have a bit of tunnel vision given the size of the marketplace and maybe forget about the inroads that can happen outside of the US. And what I've seen through doing the trade missions and just going to these conferences myself is it's substantial. It's great in terms of networking, but in terms of real business, from a just overall pure business development standpoint, and then from a creative standpoint, learning about artists that Johanna is working with. I'm probably not going to hear about that unless I go. I'll pick up on it, and that's what I've seen historically. The stuff that breaks in the U.S., which might be 6 months or 12 months later, and sometimes that's Sam Smith. I saw Sam Smith in probably a 200 to 300 cap room at Eurosonic before he'd fully kind of taken off in the U.S. And so for me, one, it's extremely fun. I would encourage anybody, if you're on the fence of literally grabbing a passport and going to some of these events, to just go. The culture of those events are different than some of the ones we have here. The community aspect and the networking, I've come to value in a way that it's on the short list of anything I do within the music business. Day to day, work in a management space. We also run a distribution arm and then do some creative consultancy in addition to the international components I just mentioned.
Super, thanks. Christiana.
Hey everyone, it's so weird not being able to see your faces, but I'm Christiana. I'm from Nashville, Tennessee originally. Have been out in Los Angeles for about 10 years. I am the founder of Do Less Management. We specifically help bridge the gap between the Nordics and the United States by ways of music and video production. So we're line producers for a lot of TV and film productions that happen in LA, as well as music collaborations. Basically, when people come to the US, hopefully they think of us and we help connect with sessions and setting up just meaningful relationships and meetings. I'm a market advisor for Music Norway and also partner with Iceland Music on a variety of events, as well as manage an Icelandic folk band and some other Norwegian artists, writers, and producers. I have loved going over to the Nordics for the last, I'd say, 6 years. So it's been a really great time in cross collaboration. This really got started during COVID when people were just not, able to meet in real time. So I was helping facilitate those conversations just virtually and kind of springboarded from there. So I'm super excited to meet everybody.
Excellent. I would like to first hear some thoughts from Christiana and Robbie as U.S. citizens and your experience. Can you identify some key differences between U.S. and Nordic music business markets, and how do these differences impact business and decision making? Is there some kind of difference in the vibe?
I mean, I think when I went to Music Finland, the one thing that I was completely unaware of is how in the US it's very common to have a traditional artist manager or talent management. Like, it's just one of the things that you end up adding into your team. It's really common, and it's not common in Finland. And like, for me, that was a stark difference in today's music business. I can't imagine not having that person. I'm sure Johanna will have some thoughts on it as well, because of just the breadth that you have to navigate as an up and coming artist. The role of the manager has become where you have to have 5 to 10 different roles within that role. And so to have where it's in the culturally within the music industry in Finland to where, and this, please qualify this, but my understanding was that between the labels and the agencies, that they don't like that buffer or that segmentation of having the manager in between them and the artist or something to that effect. And like, that was, again, that's the opposite here. Like, that's the person who's a liaison for you in the US day to day to deal with all these partners and companies for an artist not to have that seems like a huge deficiency. So I guess there's a couple of things. One, I think that because of the globalization of music, that role is starting, and maybe in Finland it's becoming more open to understand that role is needed. For the international, just kind of that conduit between there and places like the US, there's a role for people to help advise or help guide or help put in touch with different managers to help bridge that gap, because it's the knowledge that you need it's overwhelming between all the platforms, between all the things that change. There's significant things that happen, what seems like every week, that an artist needs to be aware of. At the same time, the artist needs to just have time to be an artist, to just be writing, being a better performer, working on building their brand, and just having space to be creative without having your manager present. That starts to impede on that. And so that was one thing I learned, and I had that in multiple conversations, so that's not something that everyone has here, and it's not. And I think that's probably growing, and some of the ways that can grow is seeing how it works in other places, the US and other countries as well. But that was one thing through the trip I did a couple of years ago to music media, that was really surprising to me.
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I would say I can only speak from the Icelandic and Norwegian side, but in Iceland, the lack of industry is amazing. Like the way that artists do everything, I was shocked. I was like, what do you mean you do this, this, and this? So I think just like the educational elements in that stand of oh, this person is here to help you. This person can arrange all of these things for you. I think that is a little foreign, just because people are so used to doing everything. Even the band I manage in Iceland is like, oh, well, we didn't realize you could do that. I'm like, absolutely, whatever you need. From a Norwegian standpoint, I would say the social code of Janterloven, basically just nobody's better than anybody else, makes it really hard to market and have people talk about their music. From a marketing standpoint, it's very difficult to get developing artists to, post about things or come up with creative marketing strategies, because it's just so against, especially as a younger person, it's just so against, what everybody else is doing. So those are some of my challenges, is just the educational elements, and then also just getting people to actually talk about their music.
Maybe Johanna, a few words from you, echoing on Robbie's comments about the management scene. You've been working in London for some years before, and not so much in Finland lately, but how do you see the whole thing evolving right now?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say that I'm the most experienced with this either, because I actually started in music business outside of Finland and only kind of returned to Finland a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, to actually meet the first Finnish people through Music Finland. But Robbie, that's actually so funny, everything you said, because those were the first shocks that I experienced, because then I did start working with Finnish talents and had my negotiations at some of the labels. And yeah, just meeting a lot of industry people. Especially the international scene is quite non-existent. So you don't have any network really in Finland alone. But then also just if you worked within the Finnish local music, management is not really seen as a benefit. It's more they want to keep the things. I think it was kind of because for me, for example, I come from outside in with completely different culture and understanding and how I saw business working, and it's very very different in Finland, and they don't really like that thing would change. They like it that this is how it works, this is how it's been working, and we don't want other people to come and change the business model. So I think that's kind of the main issue. But then when you do work with international acts, I think it doesn't really matter that much how Finland is, because you're not trying to really build it in Finland anyway. It doesn't work. If you're trying to do music in English and globalize as an artist, you're not really gonna be able to grow the fan base first in Finland, because Finland listens to only music that is written in Finnish. So then it's kind of well, you just have it as your home base but you're not trying to like think too much or like trying to get so much support from the industry there. And I'm not saying there's actually some really amazing people there who are working hard, but it's just, you know, relatively very small. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, I can totally agree on that. I think at the same time, it's probably also quite helpful and easy for example, people from the United States, since the scale and size of the industry, for example, in Nordic countries, especially with the professionals who are targeting to international markets, it's very limited. So if you need to connect with the right people, it's fairly easy to do. It's a good story relating to this. Last year, when I was hosting the Nordic delegation at Music Biz in Nashville, we had 3 people from Iceland, and those 3 people were the whole publishing industry in Iceland. So you could
And
get all
too, I feel like it's crazy that they've only been around for like a couple years. It's wild.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another one. I learned that last year. That is brand new, and like this was the entirety of all of publishing for the whole country. So like that again, where Nashville, looking at a contrast we have, it's a unique publishing community to anywhere else in the world. That's just part of really the life and soul and the heartbeat of Nashville. But the amount of publishers here, like the number just in Nashville, I mean, you have reps from all the other major ones, but just looking at what we have. And so I think that that's something I've learned too, is like that some of the novelty or just some of the things that we take honestly for granted in the US, and then you learn about how things are functioning elsewhere. And even when I'm at some of these festivals and I'll mention to an international act, I was like, oh, if you're interested in coming to, play in Nashville, I was like, I would love to talk about that. And the look on their face, it looks like something that's just kind of otherworldly in terms of that being possible, because of it's just being able to transplant and play if you're based in Slovenia, or the idea of coming here to play. And so that there's been a learning curve for myself always, of kind of learning those touch points and the differences of things that we have access to here. On the positive is that creating those connections can happen in one meeting. It's like, oh, well, we all, if I'm looking for touch point of like, and the US is big, so regional in terms of touring, but that's something that I feel like we're able to do, but maybe sometimes need just a reality check a bit about how things are functioning elsewhere to learn, what that looks like in terms of building those conduits. But yeah, some of those things which that was remarkable, that all of publishing for the whole country was here in Nashville. In that window is just it's a really interesting statistic and just anecdote to kind of understand the market.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna add to that all these new publishing things and companies that are actually solely for publishing. I think that's one of the key things that I've seen in a couple of years happening in Finland, because Dora, you know better, but I think it's like very near in the past when it was the major labels that still kind of just did the whole, you sign your publishing and the record, so there wasn't really any work being done with the songwriters and producers. So it wasn't even possible to try, develop any music makers into being great writers and producers, because it was only like, well, you're good at this, but then you sign the both sides, so you only concentrate on becoming an artist. So I feel like now in the past years in Finland, when we have more independent publishers who are actually working with the music makers, now we start seeing the talent actually developing and going outside of Finland, because that's solely their purpose. And that's an amazing talent, but just that it hasn't been there. Like if you're just a producer or just a songwriter, it's like in Finland, I don't think you really had a home. So yeah, I think just like those type of companies growing and we're getting more of those, it's definitely like helping also music makers to globalize themselves, because they get the opportunity to start somewhere.
Yeah, you're exactly right. So, and basically, I think if it's really, really new in Iceland. In Finland, it probably started roughly plus 10 years ago when we started to have some like internationally focused independent music publishing companies who are now growing and actually becoming truly international. And it's a really good sign to see that we have companies which are already based in multiple countries. For example, like Nordic Music Partners, which is headquartered in Finland, but also in Norway, the Netherlands, in France, or Mantic, which is based in Copenhagen, Oslo, and Helsinki. So this is going to be much more common in the future.
Also see it as a place for artist development outside of the writer-producer, I think. And that's, even within the US, that's something that's historically has been more Nashville than maybe in New York or LA. But like, I think that that's also a global thing that is happening because of maybe some of the bandwidth or the resources that you have at the labels, that a publisher is dealing with writers and producers, but also artist writers, and are a part of that story of developing them and doing things in a way that may have happened in the label some years ago, but it's not as much these days. And so I think that that's something that's really interesting, because you need that window of kind of building. And it, very cliche to say this, being in Nashville, but it all starts with a song. It's such a big part of it. But having that and translating that into what it looks like to develop those songs, and just the sonic identity for artist writer, I feel like publishers are that role, and I feel like that's going to continue. Because they're so close to the music from the beginning, and then now they're broadening out some of those resources, and even publishers that are acting as labels, quote unquote, and putting out the first single, first EP, or maybe a few EPs. And like Meghan Trainor, that story that started with the publisher based here in Nashville, it was Big Yellow Dog, before of all the pop stardom and moving into kind of that, major label scenario. It started with a relationship with her publisher developing, and sometimes it's like those songs actually are for you and not to be cut by somebody else. And so I think that's something that there's global inroads for that as well.
Let's talk a little bit about talent, and this goes especially to Christiana, since you've been working with artists from Iceland, which is fairly unique country when it comes to the music that is being produced there. And of course, because of the very, very small size of the country, there's like roughly 220,000 people living in the island, but so many cool acts have been just invented there. And how do you see in the case of Iceland, how is it possible to find such an enormous talent in such a small country, and how is it possible to actually push them towards the big US markets?
Yeah, as Robbie said, it was really going over to Iceland and going to these conferences. I was asked to speak, and so I was able to go the whole week and really experience the culture. And they had a lot of cultural activities surrounding the conference, as well as the showcases. I had been working with this Icelandic band I managed called Lone, from just Iceland Music reaching out and being like, hey, would you want to represent them at Folk Alliance International? And I was like, absolutely. So I had met them in Kansas City twice before I had even gone to Iceland to see them. I think the shift is they definitely do music in English. So that is a huge factor. Sigur Rós obviously doesn't do music in English. But I think the export factor for these Icelandic bands and the amount of talent that's coming out of Iceland right now is just incredible. I think the sounds are so unique to that region. When we're exporting and I say I have an Icelandic band interested, people just go crazy. And I think that goes for most of the Nordics. When you drop I have a band from Finland or I have a band from Norway, people really respond differently because the music just does sound differently. Maybe it's not what people see as commercial, but we're able to kind of use that to the advantage. With Lone, they get a lot of sync opportunities, and they played Eurosonic this year. They played South by Southwest last year. They're doing a lot of showcases during the summer. I think the hardest part with export is the visa situation, which we could get into a whole nother panel about. But for artists, you know, breaking into the US, you kind of have to be here for a little bit of time. At least Joanna knows that. So yeah, I would say that the easiest part is definitely finding the talent, and the hardest part is exporting them to the US with a proper visa so they can tour. But it's all a learning process, I think. And, you know, things have changed a lot in the last year and a half from COVID. So, you know, we'll see if it gets harder or easier. I'm not sure yet.
Yeah, the visas are obviously one thing, but I think another thing, especially when we think about exporting music to the US, is just the financial reality in travels and touring, or even just doing business there. And how do you see it, Christiana? How is it possible financially for emerging acts?
For emerging acts, I mean, it is difficult. I would say, I mean, in the US, you get paid twice as much for shows as you do in Europe. So the actual show itself does pay more. Export organizations like, you know, Music Finland and Iceland Music and Music Norway, like these export organizations definitely help. For our clients, we've gotten brand sponsorships to help, you know, promote, you know, the whatever they're doing on tour. Maybe it's, I don't know, some sort of alcohol company or brand that wants to be involved on the tour side. We've partnered with Domino's Pizza in the past, like, you know, anything that will give some extra dollar signs. We're currently bringing over some songwriters and producers to Norway for like a writing camp. And it's the same situation. Like maybe we get maybe we get Disney involved to help out with some sponsoring a event or something. So, I just spoke on a panel about creative financing. I feel like I could go on and on about ways to get creative with the financing, but yeah, thanks to these export organizations, they definitely help us out a little bit with travel expenses. But yeah, it's expensive. I mean, even if you go to Nashville, like you're still probably going to work a second job at the coffee shop and tour. Like, I think it's just a hustle. And once people realize that, like, it's not this A4 easy life, US is hard, especially Los Angeles. So I think, you know, if they're ready to come over and like really buckle down and hustle, like I think that they can do well here. So.
Yeah, I would say in addition to this, the pure financial piece is so Nashville, and again, a bit biased, but just the logistics being based here or close to here, a lot of places are drivable. So you can do like a regional run, even within the state of Tennessee. You have Memphis and you have Knoxville, which is a big college town. You can drive to Chicago, you can drive to St. Louis, you can drive to Atlanta. It's a short flight to Miami, short flight to Austin. But it is, I mean, the realities of Nashville also extremely competitive, and it's not just country music. That's shifted drastically over the past decade, especially the past 5 to 7 years. And probably what's grown the most is just pop. Like in terms of, it's not like LA, but that infrastructure is growing. Essentially all the labels and all the publishers have a non-country person or building that teams from an A&R standpoint, also from a business development standpoint. So that is a positive. You have a touch point here that didn't really exist. Like when I moved here in 2011, that was on its stages of infancy. And now you have kind of a generation 2 and 3 of kind of just more pure pop, alt pop. A lot of the artists that we work with in terms of distribution we do work in country, but most of the roster is non-country. It's alt pop, hip hop, R&B, and it's based here. So I think, you know, New York is different, and the cost of New York, but in terms of the regional, like if you want to try and you can do that within the Northeast, there's some versions of drivable and trains. The train system there is better than other parts of the US. LA is tough. You know, the logistics of LA by far are the most challenging, I would say. But here you can do a run within drivable distances and start to build that base. Do you need a second or maybe even a third job? Also, the concentration of the logistics of Nashville very different on the creative side. You know, just in terms of taking meetings or doing writes or doing sessions, everything is like 15 minutes away from each other. At most, it's probably 25 if you're going to go from the far west side of town to the east side of town. So I would think about, in addition, you do have to have some version of financing, but I think part of it is just, and you may not understand those logistics coming from, you know, the Nordics. Like, why would I don't understand all the logistics across the Nordics, getting from Helsinki to Tampere. I learned that, a couple of years ago. So that version of, if we're just in Nashville, then we'll just be, and it's all country music. One, culturally, it's not. There's very much, you have that going back much further, even with Jack White. Jack White was here way before anyone was talking about Nashville being cool in the way they do now. So you have a base here that's really interesting, and still that broadly, globally, people don't fully understand. It's grown, but even the U.S., there's some people still think it's just kind of like, it's only country music. That's not true. And then if you're here, Memphis, a legit music city, you can bounce around, and you can be, if you're a bit clever about it, I think it's getting over here one thing, visas one thing, and having, but it's not a far-fetched idea. If you're building a base and listeners are listeners, you've got that. You start targeting ads in different regions of the U.S. before you even come over here to start build some of that online presence. But I think some of it is, picking a hub that's going to work for you and kind of what you're trying to do. Doesn't have to be here. I welcome anyone that wants to make it Nashville, but it just logistically, it's different than the other primary music cities in the U.S.
Johanna, do you have some strategies with the artists that you are representing in the US for building the footprint and developing the audience there?
I think the strategy comes with the act. Like, what I mean is that, like for example, I have 2 acts and they're completely different. My strategy with them is completely different. Obviously, there are similarities that, as you said, I was saying about the hub, like, you need to build a hub. Like, no matter what art it is, you need to create them to have a space. Obviously, you wanna, like, when I'm marketing a Nordic act, I want it to be a Nordic, or in the other case, that other artists that I have, that is Nordic and Latin. I want them to represent that, but I need to find them home from the US, their own space, because otherwise, how am I going to get the cult following for them? So that's one similarity. But then it's like, I think it just really depends on the artist. You need to recognize what are their targets, where do they belong, who are the fans, and yeah, then, like, well, personally, my strategy usually, it starts from just like finding a team, finding a label, finding agent, finding all that before entering the US, because as it was mentioned, you need to get a visa, you need to have some money, all those things. But obviously, I'm a manager, so I don't work from like, fully crashed route. Like, when I manage someone, I can build a team. But then if you don't have a manager yet, then, move to Nashville and go, build your hub. Like, I think that's such a cool way to go about it as well. But yeah, it kind of depends what you're representing, I would say. But I do start with finding a teams and then entering.
Cool. Let's talk about some war stories. Maybe I can start a little bit throwing this to Christiana, since you've been around, especially in Norway, for quite some time, and also helping the local export office to build presence in the US. So, do you have some cases that you feel that they have went super well or succeeded in the US?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about just this last January, where we are actually not even January. When was that? February? When we took, a bunch of amazing industry folks around in the US. I mean, a lot of the film and TV industry here kind of runs the city. Like, music, obviously, this is one of, like, if you want to play with the major players, like, I love Nashville, but like it's LA. If you want to compete at the highest level, for at least songwriters and producers, the outside of country, of course. But I think that, you know, when you're in the city, there's so much film, there's so much music that goes into film and gaming. So we had these networking meetings with Riot Games, which does like League of Legends is their big game. We had networking meetings with Netflix. As you could imagine, how much content comes out of Netflix, not just the Netflix Nordics, but, you know, all the TV shows, all the movies, everything. They have so much content and need music for it. So yeah, through these partnerships, I think, you know, you could have meetings all day long, like people have meetings and nothing ever happens. I think the success story for this is that, you know, now people are really, really open to working with developing artists and open to working with people they've never heard of. And that's by ways of like placing the music and film and TV. I mean, Nordic music right now, I've literally had 4 emails this morning for asking for Viking sounding music. So if anybody has it, send it my way. But I think, you know, it's just such a good time to like be able to expand in things. And I think all of these delegates who attended the trade mission got something out of it. Like within the same day, one of the delegates' clients was writing with somebody else from, you know, one of these people that I introduced them to. So it's like when actual things happen, it's not just the networking meetings. It's like, oh, you actually got a session, or, oh, you actually got a song placed, or, oh, Riot actually wants to send a brief so that we could do music for it. Like, I think that's the success in it all, is like, you know, the activations out of it. So I think this network, and Robbie knows too, it's like you've built it up over a time of like 10 plus years. And, you know, people move around. Maybe somebody was at one company, now they're at a different company, but you still keep those friendships and relationships. So I think that's, you know, one of the success stories from this past trade mission, but we have like many. And then from that too, is like, we're bringing people back over to Norway so that they could experience. We've done a lot of song camps, and this year we're partnering with a different company. But we've always done song camps where we like, you know, have American writers writing for the Nordic artists instead of the other way around. So many times we're exporting, you know, I think Lucas Graham was mentioned, we're bringing him over to write for American artists, but in this we usually do the opposite. And I think it's really helpful for everybody. American artists are getting cuts on Nordic songs and getting to experience a different side of the industry, because I think we have a lot to learn from you guys too. So it's a long-winded answer of yes, I think it's very successful to come over here on the trade missions.
What about Robbie? You've been organizing trade missions for the Nordics and Finnish professionals for some years in Nashville, and also you managed to get to know some of these people fairly well. What are your takeaways from trade missions like these, and what exciting things you've seen coming out from those?
It's similar to what Christiana was relaying. I mean, I will say that the Nordics, Finland, and across the board have always been very proactive. You know, everyone gets connected. It's not just a meeting, then everyone is connected via email to start those individual conversations. And I don't have all the stories, but it's real business that comes out of them, I think, is the way I would summarize. It's either setting up co-writes, or it's bringing people over for writing camps. The one thing different that we don't have in the same capacity that you do in a lot of countries in Europe is the export and the funding. You have funding around certain things that can bringing people to the US, but also doing the opposite. So I know that there's been songwriting camps that have come out of, like, some of the people that went over for that has come out of the trade missions, in addition to just Zoom writes and co-writes. You know, with Finland specifically, understanding about the quality of the producer community that's there, and like that you have that, and have that in a way that is really unique and really substantial. I think people, you know, maybe first think of Sweden because of Max Martin, but like across all of the Nordic countries, there's interesting touch points in terms of the talent pool. So I know there's been some things out of that we've had. So Hannes, who spoke at one of the universities here, because he has a company that just supplies samples and production loops and like all this. He's a completely other business outside of him being a producer. And while he was over for a trade mission, his speaking, I believe it was at Belmont, you know, he went to the studio and spoke there. And then one of the managers that was at one of the first sessions, Mike Dixon, who went over to Iceland Airwaves and spoke did a talk or did a session for that. So it's beyond just that initial meeting is really just the start. And I know there's more stories, and at some point I'd like to compile just kind of all the different things, because in our world it takes years. It really does. The part of like that Zoom co-write that then leads to, you know, a version of a song that actually is out into the world. But there's been multiple stories that I've just got anecdotally from people like yourself and other delegates. So I think it's great of making those initial, like that initial meeting that Christiana was talking about. But then from that, and everyone from the Nordics has been very tactful and proactive about how to go about like approaching of like, and then getting, because these are the one thing is representing a really concentrated high level of talent coming from the Nordics. And that's part of the way that I like try to position. And like, this isn't just people, this is not this is for business. This is for on the creative side, but also real business development. These are people that are running companies in a way that, again, is challenging in a way that we don't deal with here. And so I think that some of the, just the motivation, and like I think this is from the artists as well, because when you're trying to break coming out of that, like your mentality, the being hungry is in a different place. So I think it's been overall exceptionally positive of people that are building these things, and I feel like another wave of those to come with the mission that's coming over, the delegation coming over this year.
Yeah, well, like you both said, I think really important part in all of this is not just to be present in the US, but for many companies, artists or songwriters as our clients, it's been crucially important to actually have people from US here in Finland working with us, and through the trade missions we've done in Nashville, with a lot of connections that Robbie has also helped us to set. We've had publishers and artists and songwriters from Nashville in Finland working together with Finnish songwriters and publishers, and that's a super cool thing. And of course, at the same time, the possibility to invite people with a lot of experience to conferences and events in Finland, such as Robbie and also other people from Nashville. I think it's been a very valuable thing for the Finnish music industry in general. Before we will jump into the Q&A part of this session, I'd just like to throw one more question about the state of mind of the Nordic people, and what it's actually like to work, to communicate, to be present in the same room with them, which can sometimes be a little bit different compared to the normal American experience, let's say. So, do you have something to add on that, perhaps, Robbie?
I do. I mean, first of all, lovely people, but like not emotive in the way that we are here. You know, just in terms of like literally the animation and stuff around, just that's a part of it. It's a very even keel in terms of the communication. That being said, is that what I've found is if someone is saying something, then it's something of substance. And I don't know if that's just part of the cultural background, but like that someone who may not talk for the entire session and then finally bring something to the table to a point or a question, and whereas maybe here, not all of it is something to pay attention to. We like to talk a lot about just in general here in the U.S. and maybe a bit more, rambling on, which I may be doing even in this moment. But for me, that was something of like, even in introductions and meeting, I think that's why it's always good to meet with the delegation beforehand, just to kind of, because even as we're doing this, the one thing I would say is that you have to go and do these things in person. Those touch points and those stories, like it's great to have this and to gain some knowledge, but you have to go. And for me, if those meetings were done via Zoom, you don't have the same stories that come out of it in terms of the business development. But yeah, the culture, it is interesting, and not to group them all together because they're different by country. It's not all the same. But that was one of like, it can be a very sort of even keel in terms of the commute. But like when people are speaking, they've got something that's really worth listening to.
Yeah, from the Nordic standpoint, I mean, I feel like, you know, I'm going to preface this by saying my company is literally called Do Less Management, but the vacations that y'all have is just, I mean, it's wild. Like, I think Easter, and I just found this out literally today, but like certain parts of Norway have Easter vacation for 1 week, and then the other parts have Easter vacation for another week. So it's like 2 weeks out. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I need answers by a certain point. So I think it's that. And then it's also like, I know you've seen the memes of like, oh, like I'm in the hospital. But like I could respond to an email at any point of any time. Like that's the American way, just like always on your email and phone. And I think we have a lot to learn from the Nordics of like putting our phone down and being happier and things like that. But from that standpoint, that was a really interesting thing for me to first learn is like people aren't going to get back with you like immediately. Like it sometimes takes a little bit more time. And then the vacations, people actually take their vacations. It's kind of nice. I'm not used to that. From the Icelandic standpoint, I'm going to butcher this in Icelandic, but it's called, there's a phrase called detarastist, which basically means like it'll all work out. So from that standpoint, working in Iceland a lot, it's, you know, things aren't necessarily very proactive. It's kind of just like, okay, we'll figure it out as it goes. It's like 5 days before something. I'm like, what's happening? So I think it's a little bit more of a go with the flow attitude, which I kind of like as well. And I think that's really healthy. So as long as you can like lower your shoulders from my personal type A personality and be like, okay, I'm going to go with the flow. I'm going to realize people are going to be on vacation and get to me when they can. I think it goes a little bit further, and we definitely have a lot to learn. So that's,
and I should caveat what I said also with extremely social. So that's the other piece that is like, and that's been my experience across. And the one quick story I'll tell is when I found you in the delegation at a place that really only locals go to, that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. That's sort of a sister to the honky tonks that are on Broadway, a place called American Legion. And I was like, and I ended up there, and you were already there with all the delegates at a place that's really even hard to describe unless you've been there. American Legion definitely doesn't translate internationally, but like that is a east side of town, local sort of spot, and somehow the entire delegation found their way there. So with the, you know, let me throw that into the mix, which has been a lot of fun here domestically, and then the stuff we've done internationally.
As a Finn outside of Finland, Johanna, do you want to add something to this before we check the Q&A?
I just have to say one thing, that my first job in music, I started working with this music management company, and the guy who hired me said that he really wants to hire me because I only speak when there's something to say with substance. And when you said that, Robbie, I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I don't really go to meetings and like talk too much. Like I like to keep it short and then go back to work. But yeah, but the holiday thing, I have to mention that entrepreneurs don't get holidays though. So I've been working 24/7, but I think that's also a manager thing. Maybe
That is a manager
more than yeah. But it is funny because I know that Spotify Finland had one employee who got a baby, and we didn't have any representative in the Spotify office because the leave is like, is it like 7 months or something?
Yeah, something like that.
So there's nobody working at the Spotify office in Finland for that time. So it is true, people there have good holidays. So yeah. But yeah. No more to say.
Hallelujah. I think it's time to check some of the questions we have here. Yeah, Michelle is asking also about if there's any experience on working with Danish artists in this group of people.
I haven't directly, but we've had Denmark's come over last year and is coming again this year. So I know that it's been a part of that. But me personally, I haven't worked directly with Danish artists.
Yeah, we're gonna bring some Danes to Nashville in May for sure. And Another question from Meredith. Country music, which has seen a major growth in the Nordics, particularly in Norway and Sweden, which is actually true. Have you noticed a growing interest in Nordic artists and publishers targeting country collaborations?
I think it's even before Beyonce, it was beyond the Nordics. You know, you have where this, and the way that country is viewed internationally, in some ways, is more open than sometimes it can be a bit more closed off in terms of the way that people perceive that genre in the U.S. But internationally, the U.K., Australia, even parts of Latin America, the Nordics, yes. And then you have Americana, which is a separate but also massive genre, and you have groups like First Aid Kit who have been prominent for some time. So there has been, and the reality is that regardless, everyone does kind of come through Nashville. I mean, you have stories of artists like Avicii or Kygo, or like that make their way, hip hop artists. It's not necessarily publicized that you see that, but that cross, the international collaboration, I think, has only grown because it's become much easier. Because you can do the initial, you can kind of sketch something out, get to a work tape like this, and then you can, maybe actually be in the same room together when you're trying to, fully get to what's a, final mix and master of that track. But yes, I would say it's a continued, and then the trade missions that we're doing, it's heavy in the publishing community. So it's definitely increased over, even just in the past 2 years, by bringing in these strategic companies to meet with publishers and a variety of different creatives in Nashville. So yes, I would say it's and with the global phenomenon around country that's happened in the past few years, when you've got artists that are putting up, country artists that are putting up Drake numbers, and you've got like where the charts, like not just the country chart, are being covered in the top 10 with, and this is again pre-Beyonce, that even more is going to cause this influx. And you have, we work with what would be a crossover country artist named Breland. And so you have this amazing kind of renaissance and reclamation of Black country artists that's been happening. That's been happening for some time, but is getting a runway that is really interesting and really historic. So yes, I think it has been growing, and it's only going to continue. I really think that.
I'm also going to piggyback on that of just attending Nordic Folk Alliance, which does lean somewhat country as well for the last couple of years. The folk music community and the country music community in the Nordics is just as prevalent, I feel like, as in Nashville. Like so many of these smaller cities outside of Oslo and things like that, it's only country music. There's actually a lot of like agricultural experiences that people grow up with similarly in Nashville, and they read about it. And we've been able to do so many collaborations and co-writes between publishers in Nashville. Prescription has come over and done some things with country music. We've worked with UMG Nashville doing country music collaborations. So I think that publishers in the US are seeing artists that are based in the Nordics who do country music and wanting to collaborate and co-write. I definitely think that's happening. So yeah, it's a cool thing to see, honestly, because honestly, Nashville and Oslo, just taking those two cities, it's the same. It's almost the same, not Oslo, but Norway. It's the same amount of people. So it's very similar. We always talk about how similar Nashville and Norway are. So I think there's a lot of collaboration that could happen there.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I think time's up. But to conclude, in May, we're going to have a large group of crazy people from the Nordic countries attending Music Biz. And if any of you in the audience are joining the event, feel free to let me know, and maybe we can organize something together. Thank you very much. And thank you for all the speakers as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Great presentation. I learned a lot about the Nordic delegation, and I'm sure everybody else did. So thank you for being the faces to our first Music Biz Passport. Thank you guys who attended. We'll be recapping and sending out the video in case there's anything you guys did miss. And we'll also put in that email, Toro's email address, so you can reach out and get on their meeting schedule. So thank you all for being part of the inaugural Biz Passport.
Thank you. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Cheers. Bye.